for this session include Dennis Spencer from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, Rebecca Meehan and John Walsh from the Woburn Public Library, and Nancy Maier, founder and CEO of Knockout Designs. Attendee microphones will be muted as a matter of course, so we ask that you enter any questions you have into the chat and send to all panelists. Q&A will be held at the end after all panelists have presented. Our first speaker is Dennis Spencer, 3D Print Services Supervisor of the UMass Library's Digital Media Lab. Dennis was integral to the creation of the lab and has been supervising 3D print operations since its inception. As a unit within a public university library, the majority of their work revolves around education, from training on 3D design to integration into classes as faculty adopt 3D printing as an aid to visualization and interactive learning. In March, as the university moved to remote instruction and the majority of staff adapted to working from home, the Digital Media Lab turned the library's dozens of printers to producing parts for personal protective equipment for local hospitals. I now turn the session over to Dennis.
For my presentation, I will be talking about our process, some of the challenges we faced, some of the support I had, and go from there. Let me see. Okay. Like some other people were talking about in other presentations, this is not a singular person doing a bulk of the work. I mean, I did the printing, but a lot of that was based on designs people had made, a lot of feedback from other people, a lot of people helping with cleaning, distribution, which I could not have done with my situation of having to homeschool my child, working from home, and having to go into work too. So I do want to thank everyone that helped there, and I'll introduce some of them via slide there in just a little bit. So some of the things we'd made were face shields. They were these orange parts here. Then you would have a film, either laser cut, or I know other people maybe been in a medical situation, but using overhead projector sheets and just kind of bringing those together. These are a few examples we did some tests on. We found out from feedback like this one, it's called Verkstan face shield, was ideal because it was flexible, very easy to print, and just very quick to do. So depending on who I spoke to, some people had different needs, had different desires. So there's actually, I mean, I've seen like probably 100 designs for face shields, and getting everyone well, I'll get into that in a little bit in terms of challenges. We also produced ear saver / mask extenders, as you can see in the photo. Just helps alleviate any rubbing of the ears where people are having sores. Also extending the life of face masks, which people unfortunately were having to use longer than normal. So there was also a part that I helped produce, actually a few parts of this device, these small green and blue colored pieces for a respirator, particularly designed by anesthesiologists. I haven't heard back in terms of any feedback about the test parts, but we sent out, I think it was about 50 sets to different hospitals. So the process, I come from a background of animation and design production, so I've had some experience with this, but in terms of the scale and just trying to solve these kind of problems, this is very new to me. So I'm lucky enough I was able to team up with people that had experience with not just medical knowledge that was needed, but also production. So I'll get into that. So for stages, one was we had to develop a network. My wife works as a medical health director, so she's worked in building networks and things like that, where again we were caught blindsided by this pandemic. So building a network to support this kind of situation was interesting. Trying to make sure we had all the same, communication portals, like we were using Microsoft Teams. Some people I worked with were just using email. So it just depended on what situation in terms of like if I had to work with a large group or not. Just making sure we're all on the same page there. So the first group I worked with was the UMass Amherst COVID-19 response group. Initially, all the makers within the community, whether they're engineering, makerspace supervisors, people like myself, coming together, seeing what was needed, what could be done, seeing what the best response was. For example, we actually kind of split up our group because for the face shields, they were actually looking at laser cutting a design where it was just purely laser cut. They could produce they were thinking about 80 units in a month, or I'm sorry, 80,000 units in a month with one machine, where if you were to try that with 3D printing, we just couldn't meet that volume. So we split into two groups, one group focusing on that, and other subsequent subgroups for other projects. And then I worked on face shields where other parts, or maybe people didn't have the face shields the other group was making, we could support in other ways too. Then I had some third parties that were part of the network, individuals, groups, what have you. I'll get into that a little bit with the people I collaborated with. So a large part of it was evaluating needs, having discussions, just like, at least for me with the design background, you talk to your customer, what are their pain points, listening to what they want, but also trying to figure out solutions which they might not have thought of. So that was just a critical part. And then, of course, testing to see if what we were producing with the materials that we had would work in those environments. And then delivery. I had a few people that were helping me out deliver the parts, again, because I was homeschooling my son and doing work here. They were able to help me with, like I said, cleaning and delivering the products themselves. So some challenges. My schedule was a big issue. And so some of the things I had to work on was, for example, the library wanted to have a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 work schedule. I couldn't fit that with my situation. So at first we had approval from the research laboratory group that I could work different hours, but unfortunately administration decided to do things a little differently. Unfortunately, so I was limited to just 3 days a week and in the afternoons to produce the parts that were needed. So we just did the best we could with that. Adoption was another one. It's part of the design process where, one, you want to make something that, yeah, I mean, I saw tons of people producing face shields, but there really wasn't any approval process for some of that I saw. It was just people sharing them online until I got into, went to the site of I think it was the National Institute of Health, where they were actually approving and testing and approving different headsets and other equipment that people were producing. Because it's one thing to make something, but it's another to get someone to actually use it and feel comfortable using it, and especially over long term or what have you. Then we had to consider printer capabilities. For example, there was a respirator splitter in which I had a test piece. Unfortunately, the walls of the part were too thin and so they're breaking. So instead of trying to make it work by redesigning it, another person on campus from the AdFab lab, Dave Follett, took over the project because he has a printer that can produce thick walls where I could not. So there's a lot of just figuring out, one, relying on the network, communicating with other people and seeing what they could support when I couldn't produce what was needed. As I mentioned, medically approved models were very helpful, but again, even though some of the models were approved and some people had a certain requirement that they were, other people were happy just to have different face shields. Like I mentioned, the Verkstan model, where it's just a thin little piece with film, because they're going to other first responders that may just have different criteria for the design. So there's just a lot of listening to what each individual's needs, because it wasn't a fit-all kind of situation, at least from my experience. As I mentioned, National Health Institutes of Health website was very just great to see what people are doing, modifying things, having just feedback and that kind of leap going on. And then, as I mentioned, processing distribution. Some of the prints, like the Verkstan model, that was a challenge because I could print 25 of those parts stacked, but unfortunately with printers, well, with 3D printing, people aren't familiar with, they can be very somewhat unreliable or consistent. So we had some of the stacks that were fused together. That wasn't, for everyone, but unfortunately you get a certain, like say part 5 and 6 would fuse together regularly, and so and cleaning the parts. I mean, I spent hours at some point just because sometimes with printed parts, you might have to process them in different ways and test them out. But with this situation that we're in, I was trying to get as much done, and I printed, I think it was like 30 sets of 25 units, and unfortunately, I found that out after the second round of that, once I was able to clean them up. So, and then again, distribution, just having people that would help me out with that was a huge, huge help. So for support, I sought some avenues for assisting, and then I also had requests come to me just because people are aware of the Digital Media Lab and what we offered. So it went both ways. Some people, I did tests for them, and I didn't get any feedback. Or, for example, Tufts, I think it was Tufts Medical Center, was having me design, or they were designing a mask. I was going to hopefully print it, but then they got a supply of other, traditional N95 masks. So I was grateful. But yeah, it's just part of the process. So it wasn't too big a deal. So I supported producing parts that went, of course, in the Massachusetts and local areas, but also across the country, Virgin Islands, but mostly national areas, or within the nation itself. At least I'm not aware of anybody else sending internationally. So I made about 32,000 parts. Again, there was a mix of face shields. I did a few masks, the little respiratory units. But that's with one, I'm one service. But Matter Hackers is a service I participated with, or I supported, and they were able to help 75,000, or they produced 75,000 parts and helped 181 hospitals in various ways. I don't know the full details there, but just amazing concerted effort. And that was just one commercial service that was doing this. And then some of the collaborators I worked with in state, I worked with the Western Massachusetts 3D Printing Collaborative. This is an amazing group spearheaded by family Galantuck, particularly Santino, the son. Just amazing initiative and drive, and just a great support team. Maker's Workshop, Maier in Mass. They were the ones that producing the Prusa head and face shields. Sorry. Let's see. So the campus itself was a huge support group too. Not only when I was trying to produce something, my machines failed, and I needed specific material to produce a part, I could rely on other people to do so. So just having that network was phenomenal. Then some individuals, Jim Titus and Mike Nose, were some of the ones that initiated some of the contacts also with different groups, and also supported me in distribution and things like that. Then nationally, as mentioned, Matter Hackers, they were, let's see, I worked with them about the mass extenders, and like I said, they were distributing everywhere and helped quite a number of hospitals. So. And so some of the things I'm working on now, because the demand for face shields and things like that, at least from the groups I've been working with, has died down a little bit. The library, with us having the notice that there's a planning for reopening, we're looking at different solutions to help mediate or reduce any infection and things like that. These are hands-free door openers. So you're just holding the part here, and just the hook helps you kind of grab that. So I think I did a test of like six different designs in which our environmental health and safety staff came in and did some tests, found some were too small, some were just right. So we're working on getting those that design finalized, or at least options finalized, and we'll be producing those at some point. And then with the Western Mass Collaborative, they've actually had someone design frontline hero figurines. So this is a support animal, and we'll be printing these out for frontline workers, kids, and things like that. So there's a support animal. There's, I think, one of the Cyclops monster. I think it's a fireman or something like that. But we'll be producing those and printing those out. So, and so yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Dennis. I encourage attendees to enter questions into the chat for the Q&A section after all of the panelists' presentations. Our second presentation comes from the Woburn Public Library, and we are lucky to have two presenters to fill us in on their work. Rebecca Meehan is the library's assistant director. She has been working in libraries long enough to realize that change is the beating heart of any vital organization and is beyond excited to see how libraries will evolve in today's world. Building resilient humans is a special interest, and she embraces any technology that brings her closer to that goal. She is a founding member of Team Human, and her favorite piece of advice: jump first and grow wings on the way down. John Walsh is the Assistant Director for Innovation and Technology. He is an inventive and accomplished technology librarian and system administrator with 20-plus years experience in libraries, including academic, corporate, and public. He has trained diverse groups of students and adults on technology across the globe, ranging from Cambridge to London to Dubai. Rebecca and John, please tell us more.
All right.
Hi, everybody.
Yo, someone toss me the ball so I can share that screen?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Is there a screen share there for John?
I've been good. Look me up. Oh, I'm now the presenter. The power. All right. Did it work? Hey, it looks like awesome. Looks like it worked. Maybe?
Yeah, no, totally. It's good.
Bueller? Awesome. All right, so 3D printed mass and crisis response for the Woburn Public Library. Why us? Oddly enough, we've done this before. Let's see, on the left, we got prosthetic hands we made. In the middle, it was a young man who had some breathing tubes he was a little self-conscious about, and he really wanted to be a superhero, so we made him a Winter Soldier mask because reasons. And on the right, that weird little thing was for a stroke survivor who was formerly a guitar player who can play the guitar. So we've done cool stuff a couple times, and people knew who we were. So we got a call to action from some local groups that vaguely knew me and knew us. They're like, there's that guy with those machines that does the thing. They had no PPE, and they were desperate. The library closed on March 16th to the public.
Yeah.
We started printing PPE that night. So we had the machines, we had the equipment, we had the stuff. We have sewing machines. How are we going to do this thing? So people are desperate. There's literally no PPE anywhere for love or money during a pandemic.
Yep.
So they ask, what can we make? So based on the Pusha ones and on Keeping the Mass and all these great ones out there, I made a bunch. We made a sample, and we gave it to a local group of firefighters and a local nurses group. So out of 5 of them, they picked the one they liked best, and we gave a couple hundred. Did talk to some hospital administrators, but there was a lot of, we formed a committee to talk about it, and I get it. They can't endorse homemade gear. That's just not a thing they can do. But the nurses were like, please, give us as much as we can get. That worked out pretty cool. Rebecca?
Yep, so I'm going to jump in. I think one of the hallmarks is that, and I know John said this, that we leapt into action. And sometimes, sometimes responses can die in committee. And the idea was just to start creating, just go somewhere, move in a direction. And it was refined as we kind of went on. So, and it couldn't have been done without the complete support of the city. So we were very lucky to have a great relationship with the city, and they were like, yes, go, do. There's never any question of you're going to spend how much on filament and just give it away. It was just like, yes, use it. It's the idea that libraries are not just, it's not our stuff, it's the community stuff. So whatever the community needs, we do. We were giving out sewing machines, come pick it up. It was like the Wild West. It was great. And then we had people making masks for other folks. We had a lot of folks approaching us through social media. And it was great. It was great to be able to direct them to a solution. And I think it helped a lot of people. John?
Could not have been more amazing. Some people got in touch with me afterwards being like, well, our town director's interested, but we only want to give masks to our own people. I'm like, cool, COVID really cares where you're from. yeah, let's make stuff just for us, and we're going to hoard it only for our own people. I'm like, that's great. I'll tell the doctors working the COVID ward who are texting me every 20 minutes that, sorry, bro, you don't live in town. It's not for you. And that was massively disheartening to hear some in town administrators were doing that. Woburn, oh my God, amazing. We could not ask for a better trustee, better trustees, better director, better mayor who just embraced this because, spoilers, filament is so cheap. $20 gets you 10 masks. And the other side is people start hearing about it. You know, we're librarians. We're kind of like the information mafia. People said, well, I got a printer that's sitting in our makerspace in our building that's closed and locked and dark. You want it? So Framingham let us borrow theirs. Medway gave us theirs. And all of a sudden, we went from having 4 printers. I got a couple more. At one point, we had 10 of them just cranking in unison to generate all this stuff. So we got what the nurses were asking for, what the fire response people were asking for, what the first responders wanted. And we're like, great, we met those demands, and oh my God, we have all this capacity.
So if it's okay, I just want to mention one thing. Yes. Oh, you're going there. Make it labs. Yeah, exactly.
Of course. Yeah, the economy of savings and collaboration. So, as mentioned earlier by Dennis, 3D printers need maybe a little TLC, a little love and care, those bed surfacings, and some days they're just a little cranky and don't work. So instead of cutting filters and headbands, I could just make those machines work. So we were able to hook up with an amazing regional organization, Make It Labs up in Nashua. So they made it idiot-proof. We would crank out the stuff. Rebecca would drop it off because she lived up there while I just tended to the machines, and then they would distribute it.
I think, John, something, they did the fiddly bits. Is that the technical term? They did the fiddly bits.
That has been they do the fiddly bits. We do the grunt work, and they do all the fiddly parts. God bless them for that. Yeah, so we were able to get it done twice as fast without having to do all the fiddly bits. So our final total, we were in the machines 3 shifts a day because it was 8 hours to make each mask. So the numbers and, that whole COVID time dilation thing got a little wibbly wobbly. And I stopped counting because I just got kind of tired. We made at least 400 masks, 200 visors, went through 80 kilograms of filament. Sorry, I didn't do math better. It got a little weird. So to recap, wonderful coalition of caring libraries kicked us their machines, so we were able to make more stuff for more people.
And the network, I think as Dennis mentioned, the network is really important. The network was really important here because we could make most of. Fiddly bits could be done somewhere else, and then distribution was handled from that end. So it wasn't like we were fielding thousands of phone calls. They had it set up. So we found out where we could help, and then we slotted ourselves in. And sometimes it's just not, you don't have to necessarily do the whole thing. You can just find out where you can pitch in, and then you do that. But kudos, John.
Well, thank you for dropping them off, because Nashua was a hike.
Couple exits up for me, man. I got it.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the story. I guess we hold questions till later.
Yep.
Is that it? Okay, that's us.
Rebecca and John, thank you so much for your presentation. One last reminder to attendees to please send your questions to the chat box and address all panelists. And the Q&A moderators will put them to the panelists directly after our next presentation. Our last speaker comes from the private sector. Nancy Maier is the founder and CEO of Knockout Designs, using 3D printing to make custom plastic and metal cabinet hardware and tap handles, and laser engraving to customize wooden tap handles. When Massachusetts declared the state of emergency in March, the company immediately started creating clear plastic face shields, using their 3D printers to create the frames and their laser engraver to cut medical-grade clear plastic into the faceplates. They have been supplying face shields to local health providers and essential businesses in the Northern Berkshires region of Massachusetts. They have also supplied face shields to towns throughout Massachusetts to assist with local elections and town meetings. Take it away, Nancy.
You've all seen, is that coming up or not? I don't think it is. Can you hear me?
We can see you and hear you. We don't have your slides yet.
That's okay. They might not come up. You've all seen this. We make the same thing everybody else is making, so you've seen it all. First of all, thank you all for having me. I'm not part of the library community, but happy to hear all what you're doing. It's been definitely interesting to hear about libraries and universities doing this work, as we live in a town with 2 universities and 2 big libraries, and we didn't hear from any of them. So I'm happy you all live in communities where they're part of your, they're part of the helping. In fact, we were supplying to all of them. So Knockout Designs makes custom cabinet hardware, door hardware, and tap handles, and we mostly 3D print. We do wood and we 3D print, and as everyone else has said, on March 17th, every bar and restaurant in New York, in the entire world, sort of closed, and nobody needed any more tap handles. So on March 18th, one of my CAD designers, one of the people who designed some of our 3D models, is in Brooklyn, and his company started making face shields. So I contacted him, and he sent us the file. And my production manager in North Adams, Massachusetts, in our tiny little office, we're a very, very tiny company. We're about 4 years old. We're very small. I asked him if he could make the shields, and he immediately got to work. And within 48 hours, we were distributing the face shields that you've all seen, that everybody else did, to our local EMTs, our local grocery stores, all the essential businesses that needed these face shields that were not available anywhere. For us, what the most amazing thing is, and I guess you're all used to this, we're not, we're a tiny little private company, is the amount of people all over the world. This was what was so amazing to us, all over the world, that were willing to help us. I've never seen such community come together and feel like we're, all the signs you see say we're in this together, and we really felt like we were. Everybody all over the world would help us with our designs and sending files, and as you all said, everybody was on board and working towards one goal, and that was to help slow this virus down in our communities. It was amazing. I felt very fortunate we could be part of it, and I felt a lot of faith at a very, very, what I felt was a very dark time. It was really nice to see so many people have faith in helping everybody else. I mean, I wish I'd known about all of you others as we were going on, but that was sort of the thing. The other thing was people heard about, same with everybody else, people heard about what we were doing and asked how they could help. A company in Sheffield donated 600 medical grade of the plastic shield part, and we were able to laser cut them and put them on. We had 6 printers for 6 weeks going around the clock, and we only probably produced about a little over 1,000 in that time. But in our community, that helped, and it made a difference, and it was good. But I mean, the fact that you were all able to do tens of thousands with 3D printing is pretty amazing. One of the things that happened to us in the production was we quickly realized that everything needed elastic. The first designs we did needed elastic, and there was no elastic to be found anywhere in the U.S. in March and April. You could not get elastic from anybody. I called a company up in Brattleboro. They were desperate to help us, and they couldn't, and they make elastic for everybody. They were willing to do whatever, but they couldn't. And so we quickly had to figure out a way to do it without elastic. And once again, the whole world came together to help us do this, and we got it done in probably a day or two. So some of the people that we were distributing to, which seems a little different than what everybody else was distributing to, was we were doing more of the essential businesses in town, because we're a business. That's how people sort of knew of us. We did exterminators because they still had to go into homes. Home health aides had to go into home. We were mostly doing people who had to go into homes. Obviously, our EMTs, they did all our test marketing. We'd bring them over to the EMTs and say, does this work? Does that work? I mean, needless to say, we had no idea what we were doing. We were just trying. That was all we were doing. We did do some hospitals, the CSA farms, because they have their people coming to pick up the things. Food banks, the food banks, I'm sure you all know this, went from 50 people a week to 300 a week, and they had to distribute food. The post office, as we all know, they're trying to close our post office. So they had no money to give their people protection, and they were the people delivering everything to us. So it was just, I mean, you're all part of the communities you're in, and we're just a business, so it was a little bit different for us, but it feels like we were all in the same effort, and I think we actually made a difference. I think the fact that we were all able to do this so quickly and didn't have a lot of red tape in between us and the shields, and people understood that they were not preventing COVID, that you weren't preventing it, that you were just helping to slow it down, and that, there weren't a lot of questions, so it really helped. As everyone else said, about 3 weeks ago, it looked like face shields had gotten into the normal supply channel, that hospitals were able to order them through their normal channels, and nobody really needed us to do it anymore. So we have slowed down. We still have a few left to do. We're going to do our local library. So we have a few left to do, but we're pretty much done. But the good news is, I don't know if it's the good news or the bad news, we're all going to find out in the next few weeks, but the bars and restaurants are open, and they all need tap handles again. So we're back to doing tap handles, and fortunately, I hope you're all happy to hear this. Business is sort of booming. So none of us know what the future is, but I will tell you, in the last 2 weeks, we were in the middle of orders on March 16th, and every single person stopped their order on March 17th, and every single one of them has picked it up again and is ordering and wants to have tap handles. And we're even doing we do door knockers, and someone built their kids a tree house over this time, and they want a door knocker, a cow door knocker for that. So so it looks like the world's waking up, and hopefully none of us will have to do this again, but I appreciate this opportunity to hear what other people did and how they did it, and that, our libraries and universities were a big part of this. I think this is a good thing for moving forward, for all of us to know that the public and the private all are in the same game and need to help everybody else do what they need to do. So thank you guys for doing it all, and I'm just glad we got to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Wonderful presentation. And at this point, I would like to invite all of our Maker panel presenters to unmute yourselves for the Q&A session, which we have lots of time for. It will be moderated by Helena and Carolyn. So we have a few questions. Attendees, please just share your questions and go ahead.
I am Helena, and I will start with Q&A questions. I'd like you to know we have quite a few questions in the queue here. So I will start with the Q&A questions from the participants rather than the panelists. So the first question I have is, were there any legal hurdles you had to overcome with the material you made?
Do you mind if I answer this? So the beauty of creating something and then doing the best you can to come up with the idea and then adding it to the general pool for the people who did the fiddly bits, and then the distribution kind of made that disappear because people weren't coming, you know, the majority of folks were not coming directly to the library. Did you hear that? Did it work? Okay.
Fine, it worked beautifully.
Okay.
I think for me is setting expectations because I was mixing my work between being on site at the library, bringing things home, which I have a 5-year-old, as I mentioned, and just whatever pests might be in my house. So I just let people know, like, even if we clean these now, they may not be cleaning later, so make sure they're cleaning it, and of course the hospitals will be cleaning it. So I think just communicating clearly about, you know, what concerns you might have. Like with 3D printing, because the items are produced with layers, you can have small crevices where bacteria can cultivate. So people just need to know, like, you know, how to manage that kind of thing. And I'm sure the hospitals did a great job with that. But just making sure they understood what the technology was producing and then the processes. So hopefully it doesn't get back to biting.
We distributed a letter with each package telling them that this did not prevent COVID. That, you know, we were just trying to help out, and the same cleaning, all the cleaning instructions. So, as everyone else, we're hoping we don't hear from anyone.
Thank you all. So the next question is, it says, these are great stories, but everyone is speaking in past tense. Given the science we've heard earlier today, we may be far from over with this pandemic. Do you see the operations you've been doing as feasible for the long term if needed?
Nancy?
As I said, there's companies in Boston now producing 1 million a day. They're in the normal supply channels for the health industry now. You can buy them wherever, you know, when they buy all their other supplies, this is part of their supply channel. They're being made in China. China is again shipping to the U.S. As everyone here who's been trying to get filament knows, we're about 6 weeks behind on filament. All the China shut down in February and March and never shipped anything. So now we're dealing with that 6-week delay. But the face shields, I'm sure, are on their way from China, and Boston, I know, has done a huge job and has places in New York are also. So yeah, it's a lesson to America that we definitely need to have some onshore production because that's, you know, we need some of it sometimes.
So we're beginning to open, you know, slowly in parts of the country. And Dennis mentioned earlier that he is beginning to experiment with some other products like these hand-free door openers. Can any of you envision other products that may be needed now that we're starting to open again?
If you do, give us 48 hours notice to get on Etsy with it. It's like Shark Tank. Some days you just have to run the machine. If there's something you need, tell your librarian, your person at UMass, or your local entrepreneur.
It's kind of how invention works, right? Like you're faced with when it actually happens, and then you make the thing. It's hard to anticipate it, though. You know.
Okay.
One of the most amazing things about this was that nobody asked for patent protection throughout this. So that was really unusual in America for no one to be asking and keeping their patent protection and hoping they got patents for it. They just did it, and which is unusual.
Well, along those lines, were there any legal hurdles that any of you had to overcome with material that you made?
Not for me. I mean, there's the Good Samaritan law. So, I mean, I was joking before about any repercussions coming back to me, but I mean, as long as you're doing something in good faith and communicating things like that, I would assume we're covered with that. I'm not a legal expert by any means, but I think that's the general idea behind the law.
So given the respiratory nature of the current virus and the known ventilation issues with some printers, did the library have a plan for ventilation? And did that limit the number of devices you could make?
We only use PLA, which is awesome and super non-toxic and non-poisonous because I like my lungs where they are and my chest working great. And yeah, no, so we just did PLA, which is wonderful and safe. If we were into ABS, we got a hood in our makerspace we could fire up. We could throw in some air purifiers, but no, PLA. Cheap, easy, renewable, and doesn't give me cancer. So we were okay with that. And also, after we got through our initial surge of requests and, group demands or group requests, when we started dropping stuff off to Make It Labs, they had very simple guidelines of tell us who gave this to us and what it's made out of. So I would literally just scribble PLA, John, and then just it's on its way, so they know what it came out of.
Yeah, for my situation, I'm on the Digital Media Labs has its own floor in the library. So we were already set up with environmental health and safety services that we were approved to operate. As long as I don't stay in the cubicle room that the printers are in for long periods of time, that's not an issue. We're using PLA primarily. I had what's called copolyester printing at home, but that was in the basement, and it's not like we go down there every day. So at least as far as I know, we're pretty good.
Did anyone encounter any problems with other people not sharing their designs or having their designs used?
I didn't experience anything. We had some people working on custom designs, and we were all in the same mission of like, hey, let's solve some problems here, make it the best situation that it can be regardless of how horrible it is. So the most I ever saw any restrictions was Prusa, the face shields they were making. They just asked people not to actually charge others for them. So that's the only restriction I ever saw.
Another follow-up question from an earlier question, and it relates to, so what can you see your library stepping up to do next? So what is the next project in terms of 3D printing, if there is one?
Well, I think John had it right when he said last time there was a similar question that came through. We design as needed, so bring us your problem. We'll figure it out. I mean, could any of us have predicted that this is where we'd be on June 11th? No. In my basement? No. But as needs are expressed, I think the community and businesses will meet those needs. No one is playing around with COVID-19. Everyone knows that it's just a crazy time. So I think people will express their needs, and then folks will answer the call. Thanks.
Have any of you spent any time documenting the changes you made to the devices as you made them?
Yeah, I didn't do much design work. I was more just producing what other people have designed and what other people felt was appropriate. So I don't have anything regarding that.
Originally, it just started off with, again, from March 16th to March 19th, I just made as many of the quality variants So the people that actually use them, the nurses and the firefighters, can just pick best of breed. And then once they pick the one they want, more or less the world just kind of agreed that we like that one. Additionally, standardization. Every Tuesday night, Make It had a conference call with all their, I don't know, heavy hitters, big deliverers, whatever you want to call it, to make sure we're all on the same page and making the same thing, because again, it's that economy of savings for fiddly bits, that if you get 5 of these, 5 of those, 5 of the other one, you have no time savings because you have to retool your lines. With this, it's great. I have 400 of the same thing. To one point, we actually made a tool to cut elastic. And spoilers, if you need elastic, you get a bungee cable, you slice off the ends, and you have infinite elastic. We found that out. It went through 4 very exciting days of which one of these is going to be the best for everyone, followed by, okay, we're done. This is it. This is what we're making. Everyone just, let's focus.
How do you perform quality control on your devices?
Do you mean the finished product or like the printer?
I am not sure what the person who asked this question meant, but I would say on the final product.
You can tell if it looks crappy, if the print's coming out bad. Like, the first 100 are easy. No, the first 100 are the worst. After that, you just kind of autopilot. Like I could tell one of them there was an issue on the belt because it had this little nick dead center. I went, cool. Well, I noticed on the 3rd round, let me chuck those 3 in the bin and let me go get my very, very small Allen wrench and tighten that belt to 60th of a turn, and cool, it's back in line. You eyeball it, post-production. You can tell if you get garbage or quality within like the first 10 minutes because you don't know anything about 3D printing. If your first level's good, you're fine. If your first level's garbage, you're in trouble.
I was not involved in production. My production manager did all the production, and one of the people he works with did it all. But I do know, and I can attest for all these people who do it, it's detailed, painstaking work when it doesn't go right. And they spend more hours trying to get the bed the right height. Everyone thinks 3D printing is just you put it in and it goes, but it's a long ways from that. And I think everyone should understand that, yes, the printer does most of the work. And our printers went to live at my production manager's house, and I, kept telling the wife she had the whole staff over. And it's because he had to work on them all night sometimes. But people just did what needed to be done during this moment in time.
This could be for any one of you. How do you make the deliveries of the product?
John would get the product set up in a bag, and we'd hook it up to Make It Labs and drop it in an open box and slather yourself with hand sanitizer before and after and try not to kill anyone. That's pretty much, it was just a matter. It's really low tech, right? Not low tech, not the printing, but it's really, okay, I have this many, go. And then you take the football and you go. Anybody else?
Similar for me, or I coordinated pickups. So
we just hand delivered everything as they came off the printer. We hand delivered to all the people. We were doing very small quantities, and I would beg them just to leave them outside, but they often went in and talked to who they were delivering
to.
to.
So Nancy mentioned that there was a lack of elastic. I was wondering are there any other types of materials that you wanted to use in the creation of these masks that you did not have access to?
Foam, a lot of the masks do better if you have foam across the top, and that was also hard to get. PLA was held out through most of it. The medical grade plastic was hard to get. No, it wasn't easy.
Say the most fun part was, so I had some machines at home and I had maybe 80 kilograms of mix and match plastic with just enough on the spool you don't want to throw it out. So I used that first. So the firefighters and nurses, there were pink and purple and brown and glitter. And like, I think David Bowie would have appreciated just how sparkly and amazing these were. Unfortunately, towards the end, I'm like, all right, we got a lot of gray and we got a lot of black and a lot of dark gray. So we used all the fun stuff first.
Yep, the later ones looked like Vader or Bane or cosplay. We made cosplay for people that maybe save lives. I don't know.
So this is a question for the librarians. Did this give you a taste for entrepreneurship, and will it change your approach to your job and life going forward?
People kept wanting to give money for these, and I kept saying no because that seemed kind of war profiteering and kind of super evil. The only time I had to go back and change my agreement of free was when my son realized I was going to be the firefighters, and he's like, Dad, ask them if I can touch the fire truck when this is over. So I'd call and be like, whoa, my agent had a discussion, and they're no longer free. He wants to touch a fire truck, and that's going to be a sticking point. And they went, he can ring the bell and fire the hose. And I'm like, whoo, all right, upsell. Yeah, no, I'm good.
Yeah, I don't want to run a business. I'm cool with where I'm at. The library, again, our mission statement is, like other libraries, to do the greater good for the public. So we had a lot of support within the administration, getting just whatever filament we needed. We did have a program where we were looking for, if people wanted to donate, they could do that through the library. But I've never asked for money. I mean, people have offered filament, and when I've had a huge stock, just tell them, hey, use it for other things. And so whatever we can, just try to help as best we could.
How did the network develop between the producers and the users?
So my understanding is that, John, is it Get Us PPE, that website where people could just put their...
It started off as Facebook because we're all like, it's New England. We are lucky and lousy with just the sheer amount of brilliance, talent, 3D printers, and makers. And we all wanted to do something because you wanted to do something when bad stuff's happening. So there was a Facebook group. And from there, it kind of got organized, and there was rallying, and Make It Labs up in Lowell and Lowell Makers really kicked off the ball early on in the game to get it started for, this region. So it was like, and everyone knows somebody. So it's like, oh, do you know where I can get some? And they're like, oh, yeah, nurses, doctors, go talk to Lowell. And like Lowell was delivering to like Rhode Island. They had like a weekly circuit they were making. They were incredible. So yeah, it's just somebody knows somebody who can hook them up with a Facebook group to get you some equipment.
For me, it was the initial contact with the COVID response team on UMass, the UMass campus. Then it's just people I knew who contacted me, or just people, cold called via email and stuff. Yeah, it was all mix of communications, making connections.
If you could change the approach going forward, what would you do differently?
Can we have that question again? If you could change the approach with it? So if you could change how your organization responded to the crisis?
Well, it was very general, so I think you can
Okay.
do that in any way you'd like.
Got it, okay.
It could be the approach to production, it could be the approach to distribution, it could be how you reached out to people, how people reached out to you. I think that's very open-ended, so whatever comes to mind for you.
I think it was, I think it was an extraordinary time, and I hope we don't have to do it again. I really, truly, like, I don't want to. John, you don't want to.
I'm out. I still hear the humming in my brain from running 3 shifts of 10 printers, 24 hours for 2 months.
Yeah.
But it's like tinnitus or, muscle memory. I'm out. I don't want to do it again. But I'll do it again if we have to.
I think the point is that people were taking action and pulling together, and they cared enough to figure out the next best step. And so I just Nancy, I wanted to say this before. I love the way that you took care of your community. That was awesome.
Thank you. I mean, I feel everybody did. I mean, it was the same. It was everybody who did. I mean, I honestly feel that this question gets into a political issue that I don't think we're going towards. I hope that we're better prepared for the next. This was a lot of not being prepared, but having a lot of people around who could try to get us to where we needed to be because we all cared. But we need better preparation, and I think everyone's seen that 3D printing is a very, very good source of prototyping and getting something off the ground, but it's not mass production. It just isn't.
Okay, what was the cleaning protocol for your manufactured devices? If any?
Well, at least for me, I didn't worry about the devices because handling the filament before, the extruder is running about 400 plus degrees Fahrenheit. So I didn't worry about that as much because it's going to kill anything going through it. The plate itself, I use MakerBot's 5th gen model, so we have tape on the bottom. So I just made sure I was using gloves with that. Cleaning the materials when I had to, so it wasn't, and just trying to keep them isolated and from just being on a floor or something like that.
Yeah, no, I was mostly using Lulzbot. They get the glass plate, and they love an IPA, not Indian Pale Ale, but isopropyl alcohol wipe. So you just run that down, and it goes again. Extruder, 205 Fahrenheit or 205 Celsius, onto a thing I just wiped down with alcohol, into a sealed plastic bag. I feel okay with that.
Okay, we're very clear that we did not have a sterile environment. We weren't making anything in a sterile environment, and that they were responsible for cleaning it before they used it with whatever they felt was necessary to clean it with. And our shields came covered. They had covering on them, so no one had ever touched them at all. That's how they came to us from the factory. So, but we were very clear that we weren't sterile, and this didn't stop any diseases, but that it was a help.
So for the final question, what advice would you give to someone who wanted to help or do something like your projects?
There are many, many wikis out there pulling together the smaller groups. You just got to find a maker and ask them, and they will point you in the right direction. And then from there, you just just find out who can move the ball down the field and go do it. Don't think about it too hard. Just participate and send it along. John, would you agree with that?
Yeah, there's never a good time, and things could always be better, and perfect is a place we love to get to. Or you can do it and make it better. You know, messy is our brand, iterate better. You know, if you think about it, the Wright brothers had the worst airplane ever. But it worked. And then things got better. So yeah, just get it done. Figure it out on the back.
Be very okay with a small success. If you're looking for accolades or anything else, try something different, because you know this is about no one's going to know you did it, and you're going to move on, and be okay with that, because that's all you're going to get out of it.
And if anybody wants to get into 3D printing part of it, I mean, there are some printers now that are, you know, sub $500, so it's a relatively low barrier for entry. And learning from people online, YouTube is a big channel. I always check out a few people there in terms of the processing, troubleshooting, because troubleshooting is a huge part of 3D printing, as we've talked about with some just issues thereof. And just get going. Experiment, fail, learn from it, that kind of stuff. And then getting in contact with local makers. So if this were to happen again, or was some kind of need, at least having someone to draw upon and to support you. So you're not doing it all by yourself. You have some kind of network to kind of distribute the workload.
Okay. We have reached the end of the Maker Panel session. I want to thank all of our speakers one final time for the fascinating and informative presentations and wonderful discussion, and for your efforts in putting together all of this information for us. We will now break